this was a pretty damn good year. Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here. So 2018 as a year is coming to an end, so it's that time again for my top 10 favorite films of the year. As always, this is my personal list for my favorite movies of the year, not necessarily what the best made films are, so there are going to be some movies that will not make it onto this list because of that. Also, I do not see every single film in theaters. I didn't get a chance to see some of the critically acclaimed movies this year, such as A Star is Born, so films like that will not be making it onto this list. But overall, 2018 for a year in film was really good, especially the end of the year, which had a ton of surprises, films that I weren't necessarily looking forward to that ended up being really, really great. So overall, a fantastic year for film and one of the best in recent memories, but as always, I have to narrow this list down to 10, so here we go. So coming in at number 10, we have The Incredibles 2, which is finally being given to us after 14 years since the original Incredibles. This is once again being directed by Brad Bird, and in my opinion, this was definitely worth the 14-year wait. I think this was a great sequel. It isn't as good as the original. It does follow a pretty similar pattern, so throughout there were some predictable moments, but overall, I thought this was just a very fun and entertaining animated movie. Definitely one of the best animated films we had this year. And I just overall really enjoyed my time with this film. I thought all the characters were extremely likable, especially Jack, who was given some really hilarious moments here, especially the raccoon fight. That was one of the most funny scenes I've seen in theaters this year. Overall, a really, really fun experience. The movie had some fantastic action sequences that were really well made. I love the animation. It looked very, very beautiful. Overall, my biggest issue would just be the predictability because of the fact that this film was playing it very, very safe, which I think was a smart move, but at the same time, they could have done some more stuff with the story to kind of make it feel differentiated from the original. But besides that, the villain was pretty weak, and the twist there was extremely predictable. Everything else, though, made for a really fun movie. Moving on to number 9, we have A Quiet Place, which is the directorial debut from John Krasinski. This is a movie that I did not manage to see in theaters, and I highly regret that, but I am glad that I did watch this movie, because this is one of the best suspenseful thrillers in recent memory. I thought the overall absence of sound and dialogue made for a really effective tone that helped towards the film's eeriness, and overall it was just a very great creative decision from the director and whoever else came up with the ideas for this movie. I thought the whole cast here did a really great job despite the fact that there was no dialogue. I actually think that made their roles a lot harder, and everybody did a fantastic job here, including the kids, which is just a standout thing in a movie like this. So overall, this was a really big surprise, and I'm definitely glad I watched it. One of the best movies I've seen this year, and I can't wait to see where John Krasinski's directing goes in the future. Moving on to number 8, we have a film that's most likely not going to be appearing on a lot of people's lists, and that is Solo, A Star Wars Story. This is a movie that really, really surprised me. As you guys know, I am a huge Star Wars fan. I am quite literally wearing a Star Wars tie right now. That being said, I wasn't super excited for this movie. When it was announced, I was actually against it because of the fact that it was another actor playing a role from Harrison Ford, and I just didn't need to see this character's backstory being told on screen. That's one of the things that made him such a great character, is that he's a mysterious figure in the original trilogy. All we know is that he's this charming smuggler. We don't need to know anything else. But Disney came around and decided to make this movie, and a lot of people were against it. A lot of people boycotted this film. I still saw it, and I was very surprised, like I said. I thought this is one of the most entertaining films I've seen this year for sure. Just a very surprising film overall. I really liked the overall story and the idea that this is a much smaller, scale Star Wars film. It's not about saving the galaxy or anything. It's just a simple heist. And the way they told Han Solo's backstory I actually liked. It wasn't too, in your face. They kind of took it a more simple route, and I liked that. I thought Alden Ehrenreich really did a great job as Han Solo. It seems like a lot of people wanted a Harrison Ford impersonation, which is the complete opposite of what I wanted. I wanted the person to play a younger Han Solo, a different version of the character that still has some of the same attributes, and that's exactly what we got from Alden Ehrenreich's performance. I thought he did a really good job. Same goes for Donald Glover. He absolutely killed it as Lando Calrissian in this movie. He was so perfect and suave as that character. Absolutely great job from him. And overall, I just thought the overall film was very, very fun. Really likable. There were some great action sequences. I especially loved the Kessel Run sequence, one of my favorite space sequences in a movie to date. Overall, just a really, really fun and entertaining film. Moving on to number 7, we have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the biggest surprise of 2018. This is a movie that I wasn't even planning on seeing originally. I am a huge Spider-Man fan, but I don't care for Sony, and I especially don't care for an animated Spider-Man movie, but this film got incredible reviews. It currently stands at a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 8.8 on IMDb, which just blows my mind. So I had to go see this movie, and I'm very glad I did because I think this is one of the most original animated films I've seen in years. Such a great story being brought to us from the creators of the Lego Movie. I loved this film from beginning to end. This is finally a Spider-Man film showing us Miles Morales, and not just that, it's combining all these different universes and versions of Spider-Man into one movie. It made for a really great experience. So if you're a huge Spider-Man fan, I highly recommend you check out this movie. If you're a fan of animated films in general, you're probably going to really like this film because the animation style here was great. It took this comic book it took a very comic book like look overall, which I really liked. You know, when certain sound effects will be playing, you will see the text come up on the screen, just like in comic books. Things like that just really added to this movie and made it an even more fun watch overall. There are some weak things in this movie though, such as the villain, Kingpin. I thought that he was kind of lackluster, and I think there was definitely a lack of screen time from some of the other Spider-Men, but overall, really great movie and definitely my favorite animated film of 2018. Moving on to number 6, we have Halloween, which is the newest film in the Halloween series. This is a direct sequel to the original, completely wiping the previous films from the series. And that's a smart choice on the director's part because there is a lot of crappy Halloween sequels. We're finally back to Michael Myers just being this serial killer rather than this unstoppable force who cannot be killed. That's something that I really loved seeing. James Jude Courtney plays Michael Myers perfectly. Everything with the movements was done perfectly. I loved seeing him back on the big screen. Such a great character. Definitely one of my favorite antagonists of all time. Seeing him walking around and killing people with a classic John Carpenter score in the background made for such an awesome experience coming from me, a huge Halloween fan. And overall, I just really loved this movie. I thought Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode was fantastic here, although I will say that there was kind of a lack of screen time from her character, and I think overall, this film definitely focused on the teenage drama way too much. They could have cut down on that by a lot, but overall, I still had a fun time with this movie. I thought it was pretty suspenseful for the most part. There were some times where it could have used a bit more suspense, but overall, for the return of Michael Myers, it definitely killed it. No pun intended. Moving on to number 5, we have Aquaman, which is the newest film in the DCU, a series that has been rocky from the beginning. Now, there are some entries in the DCU that I do enjoy. I liked Man of Steel, I really enjoyed Wonder Woman, but the rest just range from mediocre to flat out awful, so I was really worried about this film going into it. But luckily, this was a great movie. This is personally my favorite film in the DCEU. I thought this was an epic film from beginning to end, which is a word that I don't use very often when it comes to movies, but that is exactly the word I would use for this film. I thought the action sequences are some of the best I've seen in a comic book movie. James Wan knows how to use the camera. He uses it to perfection here with these long shots, these big tracking chase sequences, these 360 view shots. All the camera work here was awesome, and the action sequences because of that are some of the most memorable I've seen in a comic book movie. There's just so many scenes in this movie I could talk about, but I don't want to because I don't want this video to be really long. Overall, though, great movie. Visuals were absolutely fantastic. The fact that this has been disqualified for the Oscars is stupid because this movie looked beautiful. Some of the best effects I've seen in a movie in years. The colors and everything were just so beautiful. I really loved everything there was to love about this movie. The cast did a great job here. I liked everyone in this movie. The dialogue was a bit cheesy and corny at times. I feel like it was done kind of purposely, but it did get a little bit annoying at times. And I do think the first 30 minutes were a little bit disjointed. The film did take a while to find its footing, but once it did, you had one great superhero film and one of the best of the year. Moving on to number 4, we have First Man, which is the newest film from director Damien Chazelle, who is one of the best directors in recent memory. He has made some fantastic movies. I absolutely loved Whiplash, one of my favorite movies of 2014. I have yet to see La La Land, but I've heard nothing but great things about that film. So there's no doubt that he is a great director, and I was really excited to see a film about space and Neil Armstrong in general from him, and I thought this was an excellent movie. First of all, this is a technical achievement for sure. The cinematography in this film was absolutely beautiful. There are so many amazing shots in this. I love the overall look of the film as well. It had this 60s look with the grain and the colors and everything. Normally I'm a grain hater, but in this film it actually worked a lot. I thought the cast all did a great job here, especially Claire Foy. She was fantastic in this movie, and she definitely deserves an Oscar. I thought Ryan Gosling was really good, but I felt a little bit disconnected from his character. For a film that's all about him, he kind of felt like he was almost pushed to the side and not developed enough. But besides that, this movie had an emotional core to it that I really wasn't expecting, and overall, everything in this movie was great. The visual effects were beautiful. Anything that took place in space here looked so believable, and the soundtrack was amazing as well. So this is definitely a must-see. This is definitely probably going to be nominated for a lot of Oscars, and it's one of the best movies of the year in my opinion. Alright guys, here we are, my final three, my three favorite films of 2018. Coming in at number 3, we have Ready Player One. This is a movie that really surprised me. I didn't know what to expect from it going in. I honestly had no interest from the trailers. It looked kind of cringeworthy almost. I just could not get past the CGI characters. It was Steven Spielberg, who is my favorite director, but for the past few years, he's been kind of a mixed bag, so I was expecting this to be another one of his duds. Not a very good movie, but it was getting some pretty good reviews, and, you know, I do love video games, and I love 80s nostalgia and all that kind of stuff, so combining the two did slightly intrigue me. So I saw the film with my friend, and I loved it. This movie was awesome. This is definitely a big surprise. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie from start to finish. It's just a really awesome film. Now, that being said, this is not for everybody. There are going to be a ton of people out there who are not going to want to watch this movie solely based on the fact that it's about video games and that kind of stuff, and I understand that, but this is a movie that was definitely for people like me, people who love 80s nostalgia and people who love video games and all that kind of stuff. And this movie was just filled to the brim with Easter eggs and little tiny things like that. You know, I'd be watching this movie on Blu-ray, slowing it down to just spot characters during the final battle. I would, you know, see gremlins running around in the field, and I'd be like, holy crap, those are gremlins. There was just so much stuff put into this, and there's definitely a lot of love and care put into this movie from Steven Spielberg, considering that a lot of this stuff does come from him, considering he's kind of like the god of 80s movies and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I had an awesome time watching this film with my friend. I thought all the big action sequences were awesome. The opening race car scene was epic when you had the T-Rex from Jurassic Park and King Kong, you know, destroying cars. The awesome sequence that took place in the Shining Hotel, I absolutely loved. Shining is my favorite horror movie of all time, so when that scene played and you hear the theme playing in the background, I was laughing in the theater. It was just so epic, and there's just so much fun to be had with this movie. Definitely one of the most entertaining times I had at the theater this year, and because of that, it is my number 3 favorite of 2018. Moving on to number 2, we have Avengers Infinity War, the biggest movie of 2018, making over $2 billion worldwide, becoming the 4th highest grossing film, 20 million off from reaching the amount that Force Awakens made. That is really crazy. This was my number 1 most anticipated movie going into the year, as I believe it was for many other people, and I think this movie absolutely nailed it. It lived up to the hype for sure. This was an epic film. This is, you know, the accumulation of everything from the past 10 years of the MCU. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, all of these characters and more coming together to take on Thanos, the big bad villain who we've all been waiting years to see ever since he was teased in the after credits scene of the first Avengers back in 2012. I have been waiting to see this movie, and Disney / Marvel / the Russo bros absolutely delivered. This movie was so awesome. Thanos was a fantastic villain who was way better than I was expecting. He wasn't just this big badass character. He actually had a really clear motive that I actually understood. I don't agree with genocide, but I understood his motives, unlike many other supervillains who are just, you know, oh, I'm going to take over the universe kind of thing. This was a different character in that sense, and I really liked that. I think Josh Brolin did a great job as the character, and the motion capture for him is just fantastic. He is completely CG, and he looks incredible, so I loved seeing him on the screen. The fact that he had the most screen time was awesome, because while this is an Avengers movie, it is also a Thanos movie at its core, and that was awesome, and I really wasn't expecting for, like, you know, him to actually win. I mean, seriously, half the population of the universe is killed at the end of this movie. Spider-Man dies. He was like the one character who I basically went into this movie saying there's no chance he's gonna die, and he ended up dying. This movie just completely subverted my expectations in a good way. Rian Johnson. Awesome movie, and definitely lived up to the hype. Cannot wait to see what happens with Avengers Endgame. Alright guys, here we are, my number one favorite movie of 2018. This is a film that I was looking forward to, but I wasn't expecting it to be this good. Thus, it came along, and it blew my mind, and I think a lot of other people's. I'm talking about Mission Impossible Fallout, the sixth film in this series that's been going on for well over 20 years. This is a series that I really enjoy. I enjoy the first three Mission Impossible films. I really like Ghost Protocol, and I love Rogue Nation, but none of those films I would consider a masterpiece. Mission Impossible Fallout, however, definitely is a masterpiece in my opinion. I think this is the best action movie since Inception, and if you don't consider that a complete action movie, then the best action movie since The Dark Knight. Definitely one of the best of all time. It was just so amazing. The stunts performed by Tom Cruise in this movie are incredible. This guy's basically nearly committing suicide for like 2 hours straight, and I love it. It's hilarious. It's awesome. He does some crazy stunts here. The helicopter fight at the end of the movie is one of the coolest action sequences of all time, in my opinion. Henry Cavill as the villain was great. He had this really big on-screen physical presence, and whenever he was fighting somebody, you could feel those punches. Like, you know, when he's punching those guys and they're fighting in the washroom sequence, that was an awesome scene. You could feel the punches, everything. This movie was so well crafted. The action sequences, like I said, they're just mind-blowing. This movie was so epic, and it is my favorite movie of 2018. So there you go, guys. That is my top 10 list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you all next time, where I'll be talking about the top 10 worst films of 2018. I've literally been watching about 6 movies for the last day that are considered to be terrible, and I'll tell you this much, it ain't freaking fun. Yeah, it sucks. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.